This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast. Hi, it's Al, and welcome to the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. In this episode, we continue our epic conversation with old pal Steve Souza.
Larry gives me 48 hours, the draft that Walter Hill had written, and says, we want you to rewrite this, read it over the weekend, and come up with some ideas. We're thinking of getting this kid, Eddie Murphy, and you're very funny in your straight, you've got a lot of comedy relief in there. Come in with some ideas for a meeting on Monday. So for a while, there was a story that I rewrote the script in 48 hours, which is too perfect. But I came in with a lot of whatever the big ideas I had on Monday. So I'm in this room, and it was Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg. There was no firewall then between television and film. Joel Silver, Larry Gordon, and Roger Spottiswoode, who had done the original first draft that Walter had rewritten. No, I don't think Roger was there. Now that I think about it, this is literally after we were still in post on the Renegades. So they say, what ideas do you have? So I say, number one, the scene where, to show he's tough, the Eddie Murphy. Now, I noticed in the script, I discovered later that the script had been around for 15 years. Larry Gordon is very diligent. And the original concept, the burned out middle-aged cop, was going to be Robert Mitchum, and the young prisoner he gets out of prison to help him was going to be Clint Eastwood. Wow. And then it was going to be, then later on, it was going to be Burt Reynolds and Richard Pryor. It had gone through many incarnations finally. So now they said it's going to be Nick Nolte, and we're thinking of hiring Eddie Murphy. So I said, okay, the scene here where, to challenge him, he takes the challenge and he says, you know what? You can't talk to the brothers. I can. Where Eddie Murphy's character goes into a bar to get information from a suspect. I think that would be much more fun if he flipped it. If he goes in there and it's a redneck bar. Mm-hmm. And Larry Gordon, who grew up in Mississippi, brightens up right away. He says, oh, with a rebel flag on the wall and everything. Yeah. I mean, and it's thrown him in the Lions. And he pulls it off. That's much more interesting than I can talk to the brothers. Yeah. So a fellow in the corner, the guy with the beard, says, a bar like that in San Francisco would be a gay bar. And I go, well, you know that, and I know that, but the audience doesn't know that. What else you got? I said, okay, this scene where they're trying to find the money that's been missing all these years, and it's in a safe deposit box. I mean, that's like that's been carved in stone. That's like the Maltese Falcon where it's in a bus lot. I mean, we can do better than that. I had an experience once where a friend of mine said, will you meet me at the airport with my car? It's in storage. And I went to a place I never knew existed, long-term storage place. There's giant elevators and stuff. And they bring it down. The car is all dusty and filthy, and they have to charge it up. And I remember this because it was actually a right-hand drive British car. And I didn't know what I was doing, So, but I think that's better than the cliche of the safe deposit box. So now the guy with the beard says, when I do something, it's not a cliche, it's an archetype. And finally, Larry Gordon says, oh, Steve, this is Walter Hill. He's directing the movie. So I go, listen, Steve, I'm not familiar with your work. Tell me something that you've done that I've seen. And he said, well, Steve just did the Renegades for us. I know that's a Rogers picture, but like I can't, you're cutting that. I haven't seen that. What do you have that I could have seen? And then he said, well, Stephen is one of our, best television writers. And he says, a television writer? You're having a television writer rewrite me. And they said, Walter, you're the director. I mean, you have the final say and stuff like that. But Steve, Steve, understands suspense. We like these ideas he has here. And he's very good at interjecting humor. And he says, I'm not doing a comedy. And Katzenberg, for some reason, says, we know you're not Walter, but there's no reason this buddy picture cannot work and he looks around, and of all things, he points to the poster of Stir Crazy, which has Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder in chicken suits. Yeah. And so Walter says, that's your benchmark. And he gets up and he walks out of the room and he slams the door. So I say, well, I guess I'm not doing it. No, you work for Paramount Pictures. He works for Paramount Pictures. We want you to do your notes. We want you to rewrite the script, and we'll talk again. So as it turned out, the entire time they were shooting this movie, Walter kept trying to discard everything I wrote. And Joel Silver on the set would make him put it back in all the way through the entire movie.
Joel was your hero.
Yeah, he was, and always takes for a while there. He described himself as the Svengali to my Trilby. He would, Larry Gordon would always say, yeah, according to you, you're just helpless unless Joel's holding your hand. Anyway, probably because it was Walter was the director of the movie. After the movie came out, he kind of sucked up all the oxygen in the room. And I had like radio silence. I was still working at Paramount. I had a deal there, but I did not get a single offer to work on a movie for like almost 2 years.
Wow. So Walter was never at peace with what you did.
I think not. I know not. He's on interviews saying that the Souza only got credit because he got a lawyer and he lawyered up, and the Writers Guild, they had pity on him. And I go, no, it's an automatic arbitration. When the director is not the first writer, comes in later, it's an automatic arbitration. But he's got that's the story he's been telling.
Yeah, another member of the Writers Guild made that determination that you deserve credit.
Yeah, it was. I didn't even know what these things were. I got a letter. It's an automatic arbitration.
Yeah,
for credit.
Yeah,
send in your drafts. Anyway, it wasn't until I guess about 18 months later that Joel came to me with Commando. And again, it was because it was an insane rush job. I guess who was it here? Barry Diller had just become head of Fox, and Larry and Joel are over at Fox now. And he said, I ran into Arnold Schwarzenegger at a cocktail party. He's really charming and funny. He's nothing like the Terminator or Conan. If you guys can come up with a movie for Schwarzenegger that you can make for $10 million, I will green light it immediately. But we've got to go immediately because the writer's strike is coming May 5th or May 8th, whatever it was that year. So
that one.
Yeah, this is 1985, I guess. So they grabbed about 6 or 7 scripts that were gathering dust on the Fox lot, and Joel, Larry, and I and a couple of other people read these scripts over the weekend. Monday morning, everybody came back and said the script that has the best chance of being transmogrified for Arnold is a script called Commando. And they say, great. He says, we're going to see Arnold today at 1:00. And this is like 9:15 in the morning. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. What are you talking about? Did he read the script? He says, no, we can't give him the script. How can we give him the script? The script, let me back this up here. This is Loeb and Weissman, both went on to successful careers. But this time, the script was the wife and daughter are kidnapped, but they're not kidnapped till almost page 50. Oh. The first 50 pages were flashbacks to the guy's military career and scenes where the bad guys come to him several times asking him to go on the mission, and he refuses. But Schwarzenegger would turn the table over. They mainly come to them. And another problem with the script was these people were probably transplants from back east. When he needs weapons to fight the bad guys, which is after page 50, he does what Reese does in Terminator. He goes to the supermarket and buys ingredients to make weapons. And I'm going, this is California. You can just go to an Army Navy store and buy all the guns you want, But the biggest problem of all was, although the character in the script was an immigrant, like Arnold, he was actually an Israeli ex-Mossad agent. So we want Arnold to stretch from Commando. We want him to stretch from Conan and Terminator, but playing a Jew, like what might have been like a Bridget Remagen, too far, So he said, we can't read him the script. Just go pitch him. I said, I've already thought about it. He said, you must have an idea. You got 3 hours. So we go over to Arnold's office in Venice, and somehow I tell him enough of the movie that as opposed to the script, the Mossad agent and the wife and the child, that at one point when I'm doing my pitch to him, I say, and then you say, remember Sully when I said it would kill you last? I lied. And he sort of scowled. I go, I dropped into my Arnold impression. I do all the greats, Arnold. Let me do Cary Grant for you next. Anyway, when I finish the pitch, he thinks for a minute and says, I like this. I like this picture. I'm not a robot from the future, a caveman from the past. I'm having a family. I'm wearing clothes. It's a part John Wayne could do. I do this picture. So now we go back to the studio.
That's a wonderful Schwarzenegger, by the way. That is
thank you. I haven't practiced enough. I can do it better if you give me some time. Anyway,
well, it hit the ground at least a 9.5.
Listen, when I rolled right after Commando, I rolled into the Running Man with Schwarzenegger, we did it. And when we wanted to test the movie out in Palm Springs, we needed some wild lines, but they said we don't want to bring him in yet. We don't want to burn off his wild line day. Can you do them? Because you're always doing Arnold. So I did the wild lines to go in for the test screening. And then in the crunch to get the movie out, they brought in other editors who didn't recognize the difference. And I have 2 lines in the finished movie that are me. All right. So anyhow.
And how much of a SAG residual do you get?
It's okay, right. I should get it. I didn't. Yeah. I didn't punch in for that, but now this gets. I made Writers Guild history here, and I'll tell you how on this. So now I go back. We drive back to Fox from Venice, and Joel has a phone in the car. But in those days, it was a radio telephone call, and it always went through the San Pedro Marine operator. So you pick up the phone, you push a button, and it goes, "San Pedro Marine operator. Are you sinking? No, we're in a car. Can you transfer us to a landline?" So we say Arnold's in. And Larry Gordon says, "Great, I'll have everybody here when you get back." And I go, "Who is everybody?" So we go back, and he has the head of production in his office and a stenographer. And they say, "Tell us now what you told Arnold, but break it down like when we make TV episodes," which you do, like in the writer's room.
Right.
So I say, all right, the opening scene is several mysterious whackings as various people, civilians, are killed in a weird way. It's probably 4 or 5 pages, could be backlot, could be practical. Now we have 3 pages, Arnold and his daughter, maybe at the petting zoo, like, ice skating, whatever the hell. And this is probably a location he's supposed to be living out on the boondocks. Yep. So I go through the entire movie describing what I told Arnold, saying probably 2 pages, probably 4 pages, could be backlot, probably practical. I'm sorry, we're going to need boats. I don't think you have a tank here. I know the lot, right? We get to the end. Larry says to the stenographer, "How many pages is that?" She goes, 105. 105, fine. Steve, start writing it. Turns to the production guy, start building those sets. Right? This is how crazy fast it is. Steve, if you change any locations, let us know before you even type it. Because we are now racing the Writers Guild strike.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So now, cut to like whatever it was, 6-7 weeks later, it was like a mad rush. I've already done like 3 revisions for the studio. Now we've got great. It's locked. All writing has to stop at 5 o'clock. All scripts have to be over to the Writers Guild, to the strike office. So now the crunch is going. I said, "Listen, let me do this at home. There's fewer interruptions. I've got a printer and everything. I can't even. Oh my God, I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose 40 minutes driving to the studio.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hit the ground running at dawn. Do these last sets of changes. So send a messenger over to my house like around midday to take it to the Writers Guild. So the messenger comes to my house around 2 o'clock, right? And I'm finishing it up. You want a cup of coffee? Let me print this up. I hit print. And then, of course, remember this is 1985. I start printing and the title page comes out. It's a dot matrix printer, right?
Yeah.
Which is fast.
Yeah.
Now I go, wait a minute, what time is it? So now I watch the first few pages come out,
and the pages per minute is about 2 or 3.
Yeah. So the pages are coming out, and after 3 pages, I time it. And I do a ballpark. And I figured, okay, this script is not going to be done printing until around 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And what do I do? What do I tell? So now the guy's waiting, and I get a call from Larry Gordon's office. Says, we got a call from the motor pool, whatever it is, the drivers. Your guy hasn't left your house yet. I go, yeah. I had to put a new ribbon in the printer. Yeah, it's going to be fine. What am I going to do? Finally, I have a brainstorm. I call the Writers Guild, and I call the strike office, and I say, "Do you guys, by any chance, have a bulletin board?" They don't even know what I'm talking about, right?
An electronic bulletin board.
Yeah. Like back, this is when the internet is only with the military.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They don't know what I'm talking about. So I say, all right, give me accounting. I get somebody in accounting, and I go, can you tell the people in the strike office that a computer file has a date and time on it? Can you explain that to them? Sure. What do you mean? So I get them to get the strike office, the residual office, I guess the bookkeeping office, and the legal department all on the same call, and say, I want to send a floppy disk over instead of a printed manuscript. Can you please explain to the strike office that can't be forged? That's absolutely, and that is exactly the same thing as like sending a typed document. So they discuss it for a minute and they say, okay, say fine. So I immediately bang out a 5 1/4. Remember the big floppies?
Yeah.
Messenger.
Gosh.
He gets it over to the Writers Guild with 5 minutes to spare. It was the first electronic filing of anything at the Guild.
And that is your piece of history.
Yes.
The first electronic filing was for Commando.
Yep.
Wow.
That is an amazing story. That is absolutely fantastic.
It was also my second experience with the Writers Guild arbitration. And the first one it's an automatic arbitration, right? It's automatic arbitration the first time, and it just happened. This time around, Larry Gordon says, we're fighting the clock. There is no, if the writers can agree on a screen credit, we don't have to lose like 10 days to an arbitration. I'm going to arrange a phone call for you with the other guys, and they have an associate producer credit. We'll give you an associate producer credit too, so you're all on the same equal footing, so you're allowed to shake hands and agree. So we get on the phone, and I say, I obviously, I like what you did. I'm as lazy as the next writer. I kept everything I could, but Israeli Mossad agent Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's a lot of stuff we had to change. But you recognize your movie is still there. I'm perfectly happy to share credit. So you guys are a team. So it'd be you guys and me or rare. I mean, your name can. I don't care. Your name can go first. You guys as a team, or my name can go first. I don't care. We can flip a coin. They have their lawyer on the call. They start saying, "It sounds okay. All right. Whatever. And then the guy says, No. Excuse me. I am not letting my clients make a boneheaded decision." And they're going, "No, we read the script. We think it's please let me do the talking. You come in and cross a couple of T's, dot a couple of I's, and think you can walk all over my clients? This is not happening. We'll see you in court." And I go, "Actually, I think it's the right." Right. And then the call ends. So I say to Larry Gordon, "Well, I tried." It goes to arbitration, and I get sole screenplay credit.
It costs them money, this silliness.
Their lawyer. I hope they fired
their lawyer cost them serious money.
Yes. And they end up getting they end up getting the minimum, which is shared story. I changed it so much they got shared story. So I ran into them later. I said, "Listen, don't look at me. Talk to your agent. Talk to your lawyer." But anyway, because that one, people at this point after that, people would look at 48 Hours and look at Commando and go, "I see a commonality here.
Yeah,
I see suspense and action with a lot of jokes, but not so many jokes that it goes over the cliff." That didn't happen until Hudson Hawk, and that wasn't me.
For which you got a Razzie.
Yeah.
Die Hard. How did you get into there?
You've got some great stories about Die Hard that we used to talk about years ago.
Well, I did. I guess I did the Running Man with Arnold right after Commando that was for TriStar, I think. Yeah. And then I had a long and productive relationship, with Larry Gordon. And I did punch ups on almost every movie he did during this period. A lot of the pictures he did, I was involved, but not enough to get screen credit, or sometimes not even enough to want screen credit. Anyway, the movie was ready to go. Yeah. And they sent me the script and said, "We're going to make this movie, and we want you to do what you do. We're fighting the clock. Go meet."
Who had written the last draft?
Jeb Stewart had done the previous draft. Jeb's a great writer. You've seen his work on The Fugitive and a lot of other things.
Sure. Good stuff.
Great writer. He's not a funny writer, but he's an excellent writer, a great thriller writer, and he did a great job of breaking the back of this book. And I had two examples I would give you that are important. There would be no movie without them. The character in the book is 65 years old. He's a retired cop, right? And it's his daughter in the building, and she does fall out of the window. So, you know, right there. In the book, the guy that he communicates with on the outside is a gypsy cab driver who has a CB radio. This was the era of CB radio, Roger Goodbuddy. So these things were artifacts of when the book was written, which I guess was maybe early 70s. I'm not sure. I have to check. The book's a sequel, by the way. It's a good trivia question. The book is a sequel to a book called The Detective. The Die Hard book is called Nothing Lasts Forever. And Larry Gordon said, we're changing the title. That sounds like a chick flick. Strangely enough, several years later, a chick flick was made under that title. Anyway, strangely enough, the picture of the detective, Fox bought the rights to the Detective novel from the same author and all sequels. It was made as a movie called The Detective with Frank Sinatra.
Yes.
And Frank Sinatra was estranged from his wife. In the movie, he was played by Faye Dunaway, I think. I'm not sure. So they had to go to him first with the sequel. And fortunately, Sinatra said, I'm too old and too rich to do this, which is good because otherwise the chases in the building would have been on rascal scooters. So there was a script by Jeb Stuart that was written, and they said, we want you to rewrite this and go meet the actor, Bruce Willis. He's shooting Moonlighting right here on the lot. But tell him there's not going to be changes. His agents, his managers, they're really upset. So downplay how extensive your rewrite is. Don't admit how much it's going to be. So I go meet Bruce, and right away, as soon as we listen to each other, we say, you're from South Jersey, Philadelphia. It turned out we grew up about 30, 40 miles apart. Cool. He's from something Harbor, I think, in New Jersey. We're only a few years apart. We start talking about playing Army under the boardwalk in Atlantic City. We had a talk about the same kiddie shows we used to watch. Talked about watching Roy Rogers, right? At Yippee-Ki-Yay. Like this all came from our first conversation. And finally he says, you're very funny. I would love to get a lot of humor in this thing. I said, well, your people are saying you don't want, he says, you don't want rewrite. He says, hell no. You know, change it as much as you want. This guy does not sound like me. And I said, well, now I've talked to you, I know what you sound like. So once again, I was writing this in front of the cameras. And just like last month, John McTiernan was at a film festival in London, where he again was very kind and said Steve Souza was just a brilliant writer with great ideas, and he worked so fast that was the only way we could have made the movie. So it's very nice to hear that. But there was a lot of fortuitous things that happened on that movie. One of the things was one of the things that bothered us about the script was that McClane never met Hans Gruber. There was no way we could get them to meet, because if they met him, they'd kill each other. And Joel used to say that these movies we made were like hate stories, not love stories, hate stories. Characters have a cute meet, they have a couple of dates, and then one kills each other. Instead of a cute meet, couple of dates, get married. So we're trying to find a way for them to meet. And, it was nagging the whole time we're shooting the movie. So one day on the set, and I was on the set a lot, the people I've worked with coming up in television, like a lot of people I've met, know that I know the etiquette of a set. That if an actor comes over to me and says, what my motivation, I'll say, talk to the director. You don't want to be in a situation where the director says, why is the actor crying in the elevator? Well, the writer said, maybe you have claustrophobia, So I know how to behave on a set. So I'm often invited to the set. So I was on the set, and someone said to Alan Rickman, this is his first movie, Alan, a lot of UK actors do an American accent. Do you do an American accent? And he said, well, I don't do an American accent per se, but I do like, a California one. So everybody broke up laughing, and I go, oh my God, that's it. So I went and grabbed Joel Silver. They were bringing around craft service, bringing out sandwiches. I bring Joel Silver over, and I say, Alan, do that again. He says, what you just said, say it again. So he does exactly the same thing. And Joel says, what's this about? Oh, let me get Larry. So he gets Larry, and then Larry gets John McTiernan, and he does it again. And I say, now he can meet him. We can find a way. I can contrive a way for them to meet, and he can mindfuck him. Another time that I was on the set, I was there long days, and they're filming real nights because one of the things that happened on this movie was because the late start, it came together so late. It's very famous. They offered it to everybody in Hollywood. You know, everybody in Hollywood turned down this part. You got to put it in perspective. At this time, 1988, we'd had like 7 or 8 years of these roid-raged heroes, Schwarzenegger, Stallone. You know, I had my part in this, creating Arnold Schwarzenegger picking up a telephone booth with somebody in it, right? So this script, when it went out, the hero spends the first act hiding from the bad guys, trying to call the police. That's all he does in the first act, right? So at this time, the actors are reading this, go, this guy's a pussy. They're comparing it to everything else to being said. So you probably know the story. Sloan turned it down. Schwarzenegger turned it down. It was turned down by Jimmy Caan, who, you know, for years said, what was I thinking? They gave it to Burt Reynolds because they had a long relationship with Burt Reynolds. Richard Gere turned it down. Everyone turned it down because it seemed such a break with what we expected from our heroes on screen at that time. So that's why they went to Bruce out of desperation. They had a start date, you know what I mean? And Bruce, people knew they were desperate, and he got this outrageous fee, $5 million. The next day, Richard Dreyfuss, who I know, calls his agent and said, I have an Oscar. I don't get $5 million. You're fired. So it rocked Hollywood, you know. Anyway, I leave the set and I get home. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And they were filming real nights to get some of the scenes outside of the window. And Bruce is filming moonlighting during the day. You know, he's exhausted. So McTiernan came to me and said, we're killing this guy. Can you write some more stuff for all the peripheral characters so we can give this guy a few days off? And that is how the Thornburg, the TV station guy, got more material. And there was even more material with the housekeeper. At one point, the housekeeper had scenes where she put the television on and they interrupted the news about the hostage situation. And she changed the channel before the kids see it. So subsequently, McTiernan in these interviews has said, Steve Souza gave me a Fellini movie, but no, you gave me the marching orders to, like, you know, round out the cast. So I get home and I get a call from Joel Silver. You got to come right back. Why? He says, because these idiots for the air duct scenes, right? They got real air ducts, right? Instead of making air ducts bigger than normal, so it takes them a month to crawl through it. It's like a snake coming out of his skin. You need to have a bunch of wild lines that he can say to himself as he crawls along. So a lot of those scenes where he's crawling along, I was literally below him, and he had, and the walkie-talkie he had that was a prop for the movie was a working walkie-talkie, and I'm throwing him lines, you know. So like, come out to the coast, that was a line I gave him, and some of the other things. The TV dinner line was an ad lib from Bruce. Now I know what a TV dinner feels like. Another crazy thing in the mad rush of this thing is we had always said that they were going to escape in the chaos of the building blowing up. And there was a longer villain's monologue when he finally confronts Bruce about how he is going to make escape. He says, well, if you steal $300, you know, they forget about you, but you steal 30 million, they'll chase you to the ends of the earth. So we are all going to be dead. And we go, this is dreadful. The monologuing here explaining, how are we going to get this across? We cannot stop the movie. So I said, listen, I did a TV movie a few years ago that nobody saw. It aired once. It was The Spirit, Will Eisner's The Spirit. And it was like a Batman, very comic book, campy kind of thing. And in it, the villain was so evil, she was going to blow up a children's hospital and escape in an ambulance. Nobody saw that picture, right? Now, since then, it's on home video, but nobody saw that picture. Let me do that. And she did the monologue. We never saw the ambulance anyway. If we do that here, we don't have to explain it. Just see the ambulance. The audience will go, aha, this is great. Let's do that. The proof that this was so last minute, this is literally the last week of the shoot, when we said we cannot get by with this monologue from him, right, is at the end of the movie, you see the Argyle is in the basement, the limousine, and he sees them. He sees Theo dressed in a blue coverall with the Red Cross on the patch, come out of the elevator, go in the back of the truck they arrived in, and bring the ambulance out. The audience knows right away what the plan is without any dialogue. With the proof that this was last minute, ambulance is spelled wrong on ambulance. I invite anyone watching the movie to freeze frame that scene of the movie, and you'll see it says it's either emergency, or one word, emergency or ambulance is misspelled. And they realized it. He says, there's no time. We can't, right? Now, this had further ramifications. We go to the first cut of the movie, right? There's a handful of people there, just the editors, producers. I was there. My wife's there. And Bruce, there's like 9 people watching it. There's a temp track, scene missing, all that kind of stuff, rough cut. We get to the scene where they get off the truck and everybody goes, oh, hell. Stop the film. We got a problem. Because when they got off the truck, as written, there was a shot, like the Lord of the Rings shot, where Rickman says in German, synchronize your watches, but somehow that incognates, that's the understandable. And there was a down shot, like the Rings, where everybody put out their matching tag hero watches and clicked beep. But while they're standing there, you can see in the truck, there is no ambulance, right? So now McKiernan says to the editor, Bob Urosti, I think his name, he says, get in there, get the scissors in as quick as you can so we don't see it in the truck. Because you're going to be able to see it and then print it down. Then we'll print it down for the print so you can't see in there. So now we're watching the movie and we go, we have other problems. Because you remember the first guy that Bruce kills, he kills him almost by accident. I always say steal from the best. I like to steal from Hitchcock. That was directly inspired by Torn Curtain, where you see that Paul Newman and a woman in the underground can barely manage to kill the Stasi agent with everything in the kitchen, all the utensils, pots, pans, knives, and finally, with a lot of talk about subtext, they gas him in the oven to kill him. So this scene where Bruce is so overmatched, right, and kills the guy by falling down the steps, he breaks his neck. So Bruce searches him, and there's a laugh there. He finds the cigarettes, and these are very, very bad for you. Takes the cigarettes, right? And then he looks at the guy's watch, and he looks around, and there's a laugh from the audience. You see with an audience, like, was he going to steal a watch? It was just a throwaway joke, right? Mm. And then he says, I got to steal shoes. They don't fit me, whatever. After that, every time he searched the bad guy and took his ammunition, he noticed every bad guy's watch. It was a bit. He noticed they all the same watch. Right. And in the scene where he's talking to the cops outside, I said, these guys are pros. What do you mean? He says, all the labels are cut out of their clothing. They all have exactly the same equipment, right? They have the best IDs I've ever seen, right? And they all have the same watch. This is a team. And there's the joke, they could be a bartender, which is a joke about Bruce Willis, who had been a bartender. How do we know the guy's a bartender? And when he lights the cigarette for Alan Rickman, we had the shot where he sees the watch on Rickman's hand, and Bruce's eyes in a tight close-up go to the watch, and then back at Rickman. Aha. And that's how he knows he's a terrorist and gives him the empty gun. But now all of these secondary beats with the watches had to be cut out because of the scene where he said, synchronize your watches, because of the truck. So to this day, so people are always coming up to me and say, I know how he knew Alan Rickman was a terrorist, because the gun with a loaded magazine weighs more than unloaded, or all kind of cockamamie theories, So I prefer it to be, so you go, well, he had a gut instinct, but originally it made sense. Mm. And after talking about crazy things that happen on a movie, I remember I said I used to direct these local TV commercials.
Yeah.
I discovered that everything you experience at a local TV station with a guy that owns the dealership, whose wife is in the commercial. We had one we used to do. He gave out stuffed animals, and he was and for some reason, and she was in a leopard skirt. The trophy wife was in a leopard skirt on the hood of the car. She would say, and a free tiger for everyone who buys. I just remember she had that Jersey accent. So anyway, I'm backing up a couple of years. We're going to make Commando. The movie's starting, and they already started shooting, and I get a call from Joel Silver. Listen, can we film a couple of scenes at your house? I go, what? Is this like a student film? What are you talking about? He says, you wrote in the script, the first whacking, there's a guy running down a long driveway, taking out his trash, and he gets killed by the guys in the garbage truck. You have a long driveway like that. I go, yeah, that was my inspiration. I'm always the guy that doesn't remember that the truck is coming till I hear the truck coming. Well, the way the director wants to shoot it, they want to make a quick getaway. And you can't make a quick getaway on a garbage truck. You can't make a K-turn. You can only work on a cul-de-sac. And you're on a cul-de-sac with a long driveway. We want to film that scene at your house. Okay, sir. Well, Business Affairs is going to call you to make a deal or rent your house. So I got paid a check for that. And he said a couple of scenes. What's the other one? He says, oh, the Vietnam flashback. I remember you have a real tropical backyard, Joel says to me. So we're going to do the Vietnam flashback. Because originally in the script, when Arnold realized that his guys were being killed, he looked at some framed photographs, and we had a sequence that was like a Ken Burns thing, of black and white pictures, like panning across them, and superimposed over Arnold as he's remembering his guys. So we'll film that in your backyard too, with a still photographer. But after the second day of filming, they replaced the guy playing Bennett. So the still photographs of the unit back in Vietnam filmed in my backyard could not be used. But I have a still from that for your website.
And here's where we picked it up a few days later. In our last conversation, you talked at length about the process of and the perils of making Die Hard. The curious thing is, it has become for a lot of people their go-to Christmas movie.
Well, yeah, I know it's become almost an annual thing. The debate is Die Hard a Christmas movie, which has gone on for years. About 5 years ago, it really started to pick up steam. And then also I would get interviewed, like people would call, I would get requests for interviews, and sometimes on television, like around the country, like it'd be a slow news day, Christmas, so they'd give me 5 minutes. And even as far away as Australia, they'd get in this conversation. And then the American Cinematheque did a screening of Die Hard, I think it's about 5 years ago. And they said, are you prepared to talk about it being a Christmas movie? And I said, yes, I will come well prepared, which I'll get to in a moment. But anyway, I mean, the honest answer is, first of all, in the book, it was Christmas. It's based on a novel. And the novel is a sequel to another novel that was made into a movie with Frank Sinatra. We went through all this already.
Right.
So in the book, right. So in the sequel, which is called Nothing Lasts Forever, the character is a now retired cop. He's 60-something years old, and he's visiting his daughter, and it is over Christmas. And the book takes place over 3 days. There's a lead up before he even gets on the plane. So in the interest of the compression of time, the movie is just a dusk to dawn. And the timeline of the movie is a smaller period of time. Right. Now, Joel Silver, when we started going the movie, we've all worked with Joel. I just saw the thing you wrote about your car ride with Joel the other day and the meeting that never happened. I endured many similar, waiting out in the lobby for hours and hours, all that stuff. But anyway, Joel said, I like that this book is Christmas. When you have a movie set at Christmas, it gets plays on television every year at Christmas. So, we'll always get residual checks every Christmas. In this distant era, in 1988, we didn't anticipate streaming and, the 24/7, but he was right about that. So I don't think any of us thought about it as being a Christmas movie when we were shooting it until we set foot on the set, because in keeping with the idea that it's like the day before Christmas, every office is decorated with Christmas decorations. There's Christmas trees, and there's like Santa, all the secretaries have little Santa hats on the desk. So it was the flavor, was really there. And we leaned in with dialogue. She says, it's Christmas, frosty, it was all these remarks lead into it. But then it became this phenomenon. And the other thing I noticed, and I'm going to say I don't normally check this, but somebody said, do you know the whatever it is, the star meter on IMDb? And I go, I think I've seen that. And he says, you should look yourself up. So I look myself up and I go, wow, holy cow, look at this. I'm like up here, like it's like almost like Tom Cruise level. And then, but when you click on it, it's like this week, right? So then I widen out and I realized that I'm a flatline my entire life, but I jump up like between Thanksgiving and Christmas because of all the appearances in the press, right, of his Die Hard a Christmas movie. So I get mentioned like side stream smoke, but for a moment I exceed Eric Estrada, I guess, on the spike. So anyway,
the Famo-meter.
Well,
right.
the song at the end helped a great deal too, didn't it?
Oh yeah, I'm glad you mentioned songs, because when I went to the American Cinematheque, he said, "Are you prepared? Are you prepared to talk about? Is it a Christmas movie?" And I said, "I get asked so often now, and I've done so many like interviews in print and on FaceTime on television stations and things, that I've got all the answers. So I prepared a little chart. So let me tell you how it goes at Cinematheque. And anytime I do any of these things, they'll say, is it a Christmas movie? And I'll say, how many people think it's a Christmas movie? Now, the number has gone up over the screenings. Like maybe 5 years ago, it was 50-50. Now it's creeping up. So I'd say, well, before we decide if it's a Christmas movie, we need some kind of baseline. Okay? Can we all agree that White Christmas is a Christmas movie? The classic musical with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye and Vera Ellen.
Even has it in the title. How much more help do you need?
Everyone agrees. I say, okay, I will now approve Die Hard is more Christmassy than White Christmas.
Oh,
so I have a
excellent.
I have a handy chart here. Can we read this? Maybe I should
to prove it.
Can you see it here?
No, we can't. But you'll take a picture.
I'll PDF. I have to stand up and do a show and tell.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. Oh, okay. That's amazing.
Here, we'll get this right here. I'll put it in the armrest.
Hang
on a second here.
I love the idea of having this debate.
All right, Christmas movie or not? Checklist. Die Hard takes place during the Christmas holiday. The entire movie.
Yes. Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Christmas, only the first and final scenes take place during Christmas, 10 years apart.
Huh.
Right? Because remember, the beginning is World War II, and then they become big stars on Broadway, and the end of the movie is a reunion of all the soldiers. I think it's 10 or 8 years later, whenever the movie comes out. So it's already more Christmassy by the entirety of the movie.
Boy, wow, 100%. Well, not 100%, but okay.
The setting of Die Hard is a Christmas party, right? White Christmas, only the final scene is a Christmas party. Right? Mm-hmm. They come out, snow, right?
Yeah.
Number of Christmas songs. Die Hard has 4. Let It Snow, Winter Wonderland, Christmas in Hollis, and Jingle Bells. White Christmas has only 2. White Christmas and Snow. Party venue threatened. In Die Hard, the party venue is threatened by tourists. In White Christmas, the party venue, the resort, is threatened by foreclosure.
Right.
That's why they have to have the reunion there to save it. There's a broadcaster with a hidden agenda. In Die Hard, it's Dick Thornburg. In White Christmas, it's Johnny Grant, who keeps it a secret that it's a Christmas party when he televised it. It's the news guy's Dead Sullivan. Remember the end? The party.
Right. Okay.
The party is broadcast secretly. Government incompetence. In Die Hard, the FBI overreacts. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
In White Christmas, the Pentagon fires General Waverly.
Okay.
Right? He's the old commander who now runs the resort. The German ringleader in Die Hard is Hans Gruber.
Of course.
The German ringleader in White Christmas is Hitler in the opening scene.
Yeah.
The ringleader, yes.
Right.
Fair enough.
The body count. Well, this is where a lot of people, when I get in the movie, and I'll make the argument, without the chart, it can't be a Christmas movie, all those people get killed. And I say, well, how many people get killed? Anyone know? I know 23 people get killed in Die Hard.
That is the number. It's
that is the number. That is the innocent victims. The security guards, even the FBI, and the people in the helicopter, and of course all but one of the terrorists all but 2 of the terrorists who are the invaders who were killed.
Okay.
2 of them are knocked out. Okay. So we have a 23 people body count, and in White Christmas it's 26,128. The body count in the Battle of the Bulge, which is the opening scene of the movie. Remember, the Christmas scene is interrupted by artillery barrage. And finally, what is the gift of the Magi? Like selfless sacrifice. You always want in something
Sure.
unique
Of
there.
course, of course.
In Die Hard, he runs barefoot across broken glass. Right? It's very like symbolic.
Yes.
In White Christmas, Danny Kaye upgrades Vera Ellen's train ticket. He gives her his first class ticket. That's the selfless sacrifice. It's not compared. So if you look at this, it's incontestable with empirical data here that Die Hard is more Christmassy than White Christmas. I rest my case, and I'll provide you a PDF of that chart for your website.
You know, the only quibble I have is that last piece, the comparing running over broken glass to an upgraded airplane ticket. Because if I had to fly Spirit, I would rather run over broken glass.
Okay, right. It is like running over a broken glass.
Yeah, there you go. So, wow. Incontrovertible evidence.
Yeah.
Well, go back to the song at the end. What about that?
Oh, well, I counted the songs. In other words, I counted there's four Christmas songs in Die Hard.
I got it.
The other thing that Die Hard has done, in addition to making it as a Christmas movie, it has endured as just one of the great action movies ever. Why has Die Hard endured in the collective, the agreement of what are, it's not gotten old. It's not suddenly become dated.
If you look at that movie,
all get right.
If you look at that movie now, the only thing that dates it is Bonnie Bedelia's hairstyle and her shoulder pads. Really, if you made that movie today, the only change you would make is they would confiscate everyone's mobile phone.
Right.
Or they might not. They might want the people to be like, I could see a scene. He says, "We should take their mobile phones." No, let them tweet. Let them spread the panic. It will only fit our plan. I always wonder, like, if you actually look at the movie, it makes no sense. Presumably, you do these seminars and you see these classes on screenwriting, and students always get confused about the obligatory scene.
Yes.
And they get lost and somehow the movie starts too soon. Sometimes the obligatory scene is in the movie, like the first person that got eaten by the shark in Jaws. But the obligatory scene in Die Hard took place 3 months before the movie began in Hanover, Germany, when he hired all these people and said, "Here's what we're going to do. It can be off stage." But assuming that obligatory scene happened, what kind of half-assed ringleader is he? He didn't tell everybody what's going on. They keep coming in. They go, "Oh my God, the police here." He says, "Great." "What do you mean, great?" Right? "It's the FBI here." He says, "Exactly as I planned." They say, "Hey, what? You didn't tell us this before?" But anyway, putting that aside, I think that it's transcendent.
You anticipated my next question. What do you feel like as you watch it today? Man, we got that so wrong. I would never do that.
No. That's right. The movie's still the way. The truth is, I don't want to get lost in the weeds here, but in addition to writing comic books, I actually write every year for Sight and Sound. I started out as a critic, so I'll do a deep dive into like a film theory here and stuff. First of all, I say there's no such thing as an action movie. I have said this many times because all movies have action. And what happened was Commando was one of the first, if not the first, American movies to make more money overseas than domestically. And it made everybody in Hollywood wake up, because you realize that you do not need subtitles in a village in Serbia where a guy has a movie theater in his basement and he's running VHS tapes to understand it's a bad idea to kidnap Arnold Schwarzenegger's child. You don't need subtitles. So action movies really travel and translate. What happened was, and I noticed it was like creeping action movies that more and more,
like an international language, really.
But more and more movies that are like different genres are called action movies. So, for example, I noticed when they every year they say what the movies are coming out for the fall, and the studios will run a 2-page ad, and they say like rom-com, everything gets listed. Godzilla was listed as an action movie. Science fiction movies get listed as action movies, right? Because like that's the safe category compared to everything else. In my mind, again, the book took place over a 3-day period, and there's many long stretches in the book where he's in his head remembering things, because the book is totally third person a book. You only know what he knows. There's no scenes in the book that he's not in. So every time you see the movie, where Bruce Willis is not in the movie. That is something that had to be invented or extrapolated from the book to cut away from him. So as I said, how do I make this work as a film? I realized that it was an inverted adventure process film, which is like Topkapi or any kind of like, or the Asphalt Jungle, right? It's really one of those movies, an adventure process film where a group of people come together, even the Dirty Dozen perform a task, except they're the villains. And that is the way the movie is constructed. We come back to them talking, planning, stage one, what goes wrong in the plan. I mean, look, the latest version of Andor, or as I recall it, Jean-Paul Melville in space. You see, we're planning this elaborate robbery, and it starts to unravel despite the plan. And you have them with the charts and the graphs, and we do not see every one of these movies normally has like a chart, or they have models. Remember, they made models out of sticks and mud in Andor. He has it. We didn't show close-ups of it, but you'll notice that Hans Gruber has his chart, and he keeps checking things off. It's going to plan. So it's an adventure process film, and that is what the structure is based on. So once you do that, you put the movie together from the point of view of the protagonist, who is Hans Gruber. I have this debate all the time. If he did not show up, it would have been a totally different movie. Bruce would or would not have gotten back together with his wife. So once you do that, it's an adventure process film. And once you throw the first 2 days of the book out, you're left with an Aristotelian unity of time, place, and action, which is like perfect. You don't always get it in most movies, let alone most action movies. So that makes it like a real pressure cooker kind of thing. And it's very easy to keep track of it. And the audience gets sucked into the adventure process of it because John McTiernan was very clever in featuring various pieces of architecture. And we even put up a pinup poster that we got from Playboy, so you could always know where you are in the building, because it's very hard to tell where you are in the building. Right. So you pay attention. There's a lot of times Bruce passes a sign. It tells you what floor you are on. You see the elevator buttons. You see geography coming back again. So you really get to, first of all, you identify with Bruce Willis because he's an ordinary guy. He does, I've never been in a limousine before. He's the antithesis of the action movie heroes we had before.
Right.
So now you identify with him completely. You understand the geography of the place, and there's an internal and an external goal. He wants to put his family back together, and he wants to stop these villains. So you've got so many things that engage an audience, right, in any movie. But the entire checklist of audience engagement, is here in the movie. Every box is checked. You even have little kids, like in emotional danger, So I think all of those things made it a perfect encapsulation of what you would want in an action movie, and I think that's why it works. Plus the fact that it became a template for all these movies that are Die Hard where it became such, like we had Speed was Die Hard on a bus. The original book of Nothing Lasts Forever was inspired. Roderick Thorpe went to see The Towering Inferno.
Oh, gosh.
And then that night, he had a dream where his character from the first book was in a burning building. And that was his inspiration to write the sequel. He modeled it on a disaster movie. So when we said, what are we going to do now? We said we should do all the disaster movies of that era. So our plan was The Towering Inferno, Airport, right? And then we were going to do the Poseidon Adventure. We were going to do a cruise ship, but Under Siege beat us to that point. And also Joel and Larry were no longer directly involved with the movies beyond a certain point. So I think the fact that it ignited a bunch of imitators, or I would not say imitators. It kind of launched its own subgenre, which everybody has seen variations of, and with few exceptions, most people say, "Well, this is the best one of those Die Hard inners," right? And again, the Christmas theme, the family theme. I think these are the reasons why it has transcended its genre. It's now on the Library of Congress list of movies that get preserved, which is nice. It's very flattering. And I think it's going to be perennial for a while. And like I say, except for the wardrobe, it holds up very well. You know, it really is pretty timeless. And it's a situation that, unfortunately, we have these situations all the time where people are hostage and so forth. And McTiernan was very wise to say, you know, let's get off of terrorism. You know, because in the original book, they are actually a terrorist group. Like like remember at one point I have in a newscast, they say he was formerly involved in this German terrorist group, but the SS expelled him for being too violent. You know what I mean? So what they say he formerly was, they are in the book entirely.
Mm.
It's very impressive to be in the Library of Congress. Gil, I don't see that ever happening to Bordello of Blood. I'm sorry to say. I don't think we'll ever get there.
Oh, don't be sorry to say it. I'm actually proud.
Yeah, but Tales from the Crypt is very important as far as, you know, in comic history.
What was the origins of Streetfighter? How did that come to you?
Well, I had done an adaptation of a property called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, which is an award-winning comic book called Xenozoic Tales, Capcom, the same company that did Street Fighter, the video game company, they made a coin-op game of the comic book, which is how we were aware of each other, like on parallel tracks. And then I did when I was doing the animated show for CBS of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and there's a story I could tell you there too if you want to come back to it. The producer of that got wind of the fact that Capcom wanted to make a feature film of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, of Street Fighter, and I was on the radar by this time at Capcom because I had ported their coin-operated game to the home video version, which I may mention to the past. This is for the Sega CD-ROM game, so I'm an executive producer of that game, and I helped write the storyline. And I told you, a very young, talented programmer who was here on a student visa really needed to get an O1, a genius visa to be able to work in America. And so we signed off on that. And that was Elon Musk, which is his first job out of graduate school.
Kidding. Wow.
Did I say this last time? No, if you Google Elon Musk video games, the story turns up online several places. And if you Google deep enough, you'll see my name mentioned as an executive producer of the game. So anyway, talk about Venn diagrams. We got Elon Musk, and now we've got like Street Fighter. Okay, so
that was a great twist. I did not see that coming.
I'm still waiting for my free Lexus. My free Tesla, or maybe I don't want a free Tesla for my.
At some point, I would love to have a conversation with you about writing for video games. I spent a year and a half as a consultant for Electronic Arts, which was a fascinating year. It's such an intriguing world in which to storytell.
Well, this is a what do you call a rail shooter in the context of video games. Mm-hmm. So there isn't really a very complex storyline. Is you want to stop the evil poachers who are poaching the dinosaurs. It's in the future. It's basically like a game preserve. Yeah. And you have to drive the car and shoot at the same time. And there's also a 2-player mode. And it was an education for me. And what I remember is when I went up to their offices up in the Bay Area, Elon Musk, because he was like so junior on the show, he was assigned to walk me through the story. And you know how on an animation project, they'll have the storyboards in the hallway, right? Yeah. Here they had a giant roll of paper that they unrolled in the corridor, and we walked along looking down at it. And you say, okay, if you do this, you go there. And it looks sort of like back in the day when they had like Radio Shack kits. If you know what schematics look like, that's what the flow line, for at least in this benighted era, the early 1990s, that's what the flow chart of the video game looked like. It had lines and squares and triangles and circles indicating not transistors and resistors, but choices and turns. Yeah.
And it was all flow chart.
Yeah.
Dads from the Crypt's Jason Stein joins the conversation.
First of all, I mean, I was your target demographic when this movie came out. I was an arcade kid in the early 90s, and this was like I can imagine the kids in 1978 when the first Superman came out. You're like, oh my God, this is like personification of, one of our superheroes. So this is a monumental movie for children of a certain age to see their heroes and the people that, they interact with coming onto the big screen. So there was so much anticipation built up for that. And
well, how old were you at this time?
Oh, this was 94?
Yeah.
Yes, that was my bar mitzvah year. So I was 13.
Oh, okay. Well, you were probably right on the cusp of liking it as not being disappointed, because as I said earlier in these interviews, for one reason or other, all of the fights were underwhelming because of the schedule changes and the actors not being trained in the fights. So we had designed the movie to be PG-13 because if it had been R, there could not have been any toy sales at Happy Meals. And if it had been G, no teenager would want to go see it. So the sweet spot was PG-13, that older kids who knew Van Damme would go see it, expecting rougher action. And the little brothers and sisters, mommy, can I go with Billy? Well, it's PG-13, take him along. But I know, even as we were cutting it, that we had to not only were the fights not what we hoped when we filmed them, but I had to dilute them further in post-production because the MPAA was extremely twitchy that end. And despite my best efforts and it being underwhelming in fights, they gave it an R when we first turned it in. So I got away with it with you. But what's interesting is the movie, which was excoriated in most places in the reviews as being stupid and mindless, whatever, and video games can't be a movie. And I remember people saying, this movie's so stupid, it's funny, but you can't look at it and not think it was supposed to be funny. But I know now that I went to Spain to a film festival of genre movies, and we had a screening here where it was the 25th anniversary of the movie. And so many people your age or a couple of years younger came up to me to autograph paraphernalia. And I realized what happened was that for a lot of kids, it was their first action movie. It was the first action movie their parents let them see because it was PG-13 and they knew who Jean-Claude Van Damme was from the other movies. So I find now that on the 25th anniversary, there are all these pieces online in the magazine saying, hey, this movie's actually pretty good. We were wrong the first time. Yeah, I remember you the first time around. Now it's in your little paperback book, Best Movies on Video. Now you like it. But I was surprised how many people, and again, in a demographic that was 11 to 13 years old at that time, it's one of their favorite movies, as you're saying.
Right. I mean, I definitely had seen movies like Die Hard, but they were on TV, they were censored. Yeah. And this is one, I think this might be one of the first movies I begged my father to take me to go see. I remember this and of course Mortal Kombat soon after later that year. I mean, take me to go see both of them. And they're probably, some of the most concrete memories I have growing up with my father. Oh, and yeah, it might not have been Shakespeare, but to us, seeing just seeing the characters come to life.
Well, Raoul treated it like Shakespeare, which is one of the reasons the pictures which are so great. He totally threw himself into it. He viewed old newsreels of Mussolini. If you notice, he preens and poses a lot like Mussolini. And again, in his mind, where he did it, in his mind, he has this long speech he gives about how he just wants to conquer the world to bring peace everywhere. And the character, he's quite sincere, the character. He did the movie because his kids played the game, and they see some scripts coming in envelopes, and they see the titles, and they lost their minds when they saw it said Streetfighter.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. And that performance alone is worth the price of admission. It's so amazing. And yeah, it's over the top. It's supposed to be because that's what those characters are. And the speech he gives about the day that he graced your village was the most important day of your life. And for me, it was Tuesday. That's just iconic. That's
become a meme. And by the way, I'm amazed how many memes and GIFs. It is pronounced GIF, like the peanut butter. I understand, but I'm startled how many memes and GIFs there are that are from this movie. There's that one for me. It was Tuesday, which has now become like an official meme. There's a website that's fascinating. You can get lost in it for hours, called TV Tropes. I recommend it to anyone, and it covers just all the cliches and tropes. And so they will point out a cliche or a trope that's in anime, right? Or a video game, and also in Shakespeare. It's a great site. You get lost in it. What's it
called again? We'll promo it for sure. It's a cool site.
Well, they have Supreme Moment of Awesomeness. that's when a whole team comes together, right?
Mhm.
And they start marching towards the camera. You know, and so an example would be the dirty. It would be what is the Sam Peckinpah Western? The was the most violent movie ever made, you know, with William Holden, one of the most. Anyway, where they all walk together towards the camera. So they give that, but they have one of the tropes they have is, for me, it was Tuesday, and they said they've named that trope when the villain has done so many bad things he can't keep track of them, and they give examples going back to Shakespeare, you know. Although they said, but we're naming this trope, this category of trope. For me, it was Tuesday after that moment. So I felt that I've immortalized now from that.
Right. So, but one of the other things that is really poignant about that movie is, again, working with Raul Julia on his last film. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because that whole story just makes me like tear up.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he was just a wonderful person to work with. One of the finest actors I've ever worked with. A wonderful companion, raconteur. And every moment with him I cherish. He also was incredibly supportive and encouraging to the far younger cast, some of whom were in awe of him, and he would routinely have to put them at ease, you know, in scenes with them, and give them advice. He really was a mentor to a lot of these people, and I guarantee if you speak to any of them, they will always say this about him. We did not know that he had been sick when you know, prior to the movie, and in fact, I think I told this story earlier in the show. But our Marilyn Vance, who's an Academy Award nominee, a costume designer, who did his costume. She was on another movie, but she did his costume for us. She went to Australia like a day ahead of us, and I was like in the waiting room at I guess the airport, waiting to get the next flight to the Gold Coast. We landed in Sydney, or waiting for the limo driver. I can't remember. I think it was a limo drive, but I got paged at the in the first class lounge, and she said, "Listen, I want to let you know before you walk in here," because I was going to go straight to meet him, you know, in wardrobe, that we got a problem. He's like ghastly underweight. He looks like, you know, he was like, you know, on a death march. So I'm going to have to pad the costume out, and I don't know what's going on here. So. So before I even got to the studio, somebody had called his management, and what the hell's going on here? And they said, he got an intestinal virus when he was in South America filming what was a movie released posthumously, the second posthumous release after ours, about I forget the name of the title of the movie, but it's about a priest who was defending the indigenous people against the people, you know, going into the rainforest and destroying the village and the environment. And he's recovering now. And this was, of course, a cover story. We learned later that he had stomach cancer and had in fact, Benny Acredes, who was our who was our trainer for everybody, and a fight coordinator, he said to me before we got the true story from back in Hollywood, he's, you know, I think this intestinal virus story is like, because I noticed in the gym, he's got this like fresh scar, like, you know, in his abdomen. So that was a hint.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was, originally the movie was designed to do all the dialogue scenes up front. And also Raul was very expensive. And that way we could either shoot him and then he could leave and do the rest of the movie. But now when he was so underweight, I said, I can't photograph him like this. We have to fatten him up. So I had to turn the whole production schedule around and try and shoot everything he wasn't in first to give him time to fatten up. And if you look at the movie, the one scene I could not juggle just because of the, you know, when is the set constructed? Are the other actors available? You know, when do they fly in and fly out? Is the first scene where he goes down and talks to Dr. Dalsim, and they're in the laboratory and they're like trying to, like, you know, Incredible Hulk eyes one of the prisoners. And he says, Dr. Dalsim, how does it go today? And if you look at that scene, he looks very underweight in that scene. We tried to hide it with lighting and makeup. But after that scene, he was not on camera for like over 3 weeks, almost a month. And he will look more robust. And the last thing we filmed with him was his big fight with John Claude, where he does a great deal of his own action. We really strung him up on the wires. And he looks very formidable there, which was good at that point.
Huh. Yeah, I was watching that scene earlier today, just to refresh, and you can really tell that's him. You can see like his face flying by the camera, so it's not just a guy on the wire. So it was really impressive.
Yeah, he was very game. And he's also up there in the flying control room too, duking out with the Jean-Claude.
Wow.
Let's talk about directing.
Okay.
Now, the first time that you directed, as we said, was on Tales from the Crypt, doing
First time in Hollywood.
Yeah, well, the first time in Hollywood. That's right. We take away the.
Oh, wait! I left something out. Hold it. I left out a very important thing, very obscure, but I did my stoner movie in 1972,
right?
Which won a special jury prize at the Atlanta International Film Festival.
Okay.
And,
Can't take that away.
And with my luck, I signed with a distributor there who went bankrupt the week the movie came out, and so it played like in 5 theaters. But it's now
happens.
It's now on Shout TV. So I say to young filmmakers, if you want to be inspired, you can get from here to there. You can find it on the Shout channel, and it was really there, not here.
Didn't Bob Rafelson do a thing called Head?
I think he did. Yes.
Yeah, is this your version of Head?
Well, I would say it's more like the Cheech and Chong movie because it's just all about pot.
Okay.
I mean, Head was sort of like a Hard Day's Night, Moved to America with
okay.
In a way, it covers more territory. We were kind of one note. It was just all marijuana. And the high point of the movie is probably when they build this pot selling empire. They have a convention of all their sales reps, and they have an industrial film they show about the company, and it's like a parody of every industrial film you've ever seen. So that's probably the cleverest thing in the movie. Then in 1982, it's exactly 10 years. It's almost like every 10 years I direct. I do the math here. I have to figure this out. But as we go forward, we'll see if it's every 10 years. I think it is. I'm overdue now. When I was doing Knight Rider, some friends of mine who had a kind of an improv group that I met a few times, maybe to sample the products that were in my first movie. Somebody was working with MTV, whatever the hell it was. MTV, there was a momentary 3D craze that came back for a while there, where they were doing 3D on television. You would get the glasses
I
at
remember
7-Eleven. So MTV was going to go national on the cable system. And this was Halloween 1982. So they were going to go national that week, expanding into the cable, and they wanted to do some kind of special programming. So they got the rights to this movie that's been called one of the worst movies ever made, called Robot Monster, which you may have seen. It was a 3D black and white movie, and the monster was a gorilla suit with a space helmet because that was all they could afford.
Very famous image. Yeah.
So the idea was let's take that movie and the inspiration was we're going to do to that movie what Woody Allen did to a Japanese movie in What's Up, Tiger Lily.
Right.
You take it and you redub it and do all that.
Yeah.
So they said, would you like to do this? Could you like supervise the help these guys design the improv framework, come up with a plot. And then, and again, it was like Larry David show. The script was just about 12 pages, but they improvised a lot, worked with them, and then direct it. So I did that for MTV, and they had the glasses. You could get them at 7-Eleven, and they had a banana on the center. It was very well publicized. Now, what frustrated me is I wanted to do it in black and white, so the new material would match the old movie. But the MTV said, no, it's got to be in color. I said, well, can we colorize? Don't have the money. So it's strange. It goes for black, which kind of ruins the image. What's strange, if you look at this movie, which is out there somewhere, I don't know, pardon me. I heard there's going to be a home video release of this soon. Someone told me, a company called Mill Creek. They're talking about doing it. They did a steel case of Streetfighter just recently. So they have plans to try and do a steel case of this movie, Robot Monster, the special edition. So I directed that, and what's strange, if you look at it now, it is the precursor completely. I really should have gotten a lawyer on this, of Mystery Science Theater.
Sure,
I'm not taking away from Mystery Science Theater because Woody Allen got there first. But this idea that we're on a space station, right, and we're now intercutting a space station material with an old movie, right, and pretending it's one plot is uniting it and commenting on the old movie, So I definitely feel that in the same way The Running Man was without a doubt a precursor of American Gladiators. And the American Gladiators even told us to me, said, you know how we sold that show? We got a VHS tape of the Running Man, and we intercut it with footage of wrestling and said this of modern day wrestling and said that was our pitch. So thank you very much. All right. So anyway, so now that's 82. And then if you look at, I think around
they even send you a birthday card.
Yeah. If you look at, and then around 1992, I think is when we were doing Tales, right?
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, but at this point, I knew if I was going to get, I knew I had to get something under my belt because the wannabe Cheech and Chong movie and the wannabe are actually precursor of Mystery Science Theater. These were not going to get me a job directing like a scripted thing. So Tales of the Crypt was the opportunity. And when Joel said to us, to Jerry and to me, do you guys want to work on the show? I said, done, I'm in. And I deliberately, I believe me or not, I actually was a precursor. My parents didn't know what I was reading. So I was a very precocious reader, and I was reading Tales of the Crypt when it was in print the first time around, and I remember that particular story. In fact, the two stories, the story that Jerry did and the story that I did, I remembered both of them from my youth. And so when Joel sent over all the Xeroxes of different books, I go, where are these two? Neither one was there. And I said, I'm looking for two stories, and one was about a love potion that goes wrong, like in Haiti or somewhere. And the other one, and so they actually dug them out. So that's how vivid my memory of those two were in childhood. The one that I didn't do actually stuck more in my mind. The one that Jerry did stuck more in my mind actually than the other one with the escaped convict. But I chose the convict one to direct because I knew it would stand out because it was mostly outdoors and would be a change of pace from the other tales. And it was also more action adventure than like supernatural. There's nothing supernatural in it. And I figured that's the best directing sample I could pick for myself. And we went out to Joshua Tree to film it and really to get the heat and the location and stuff. And this is an example of thinking on your feet and why it's good to sometimes be the auteur, to be the writer director. We're filming the show and all of a sudden the wind comes up and a windstorm comes up and a sandstorm starts to blow. So the first AD says, listen, I just checked the weather report. This is like serious. They're telling people to like batten down their houses and shops, and we're going to have to stop. And I said, no, we're not. We're going to keep filming. And he said, yeah, but there's no sandstorm in the script. And I said, there is now.
Yeah.
So I
Did
actually
you get the revised pages?
No. So I actually filmed until we could we were actually, all of us were like cowboy stars. We all had bandanas on our face. It wasn't COVID, but in between every take, everybody, even, the actors had bandanas on their faces, right? And people's glasses are frosting up and that we're protecting the camera lenses. And I filmed until we could not see. It was so dark from the sandstorm. And then that night, as soon as we wrapped, I called the studio and I said, send up the biggest fans you have on a truck where they have airplane propellers inside of a fan. And so the next day I added material. And that night I wrote like a new business to incorporate the sandstorm, including Kyle MacLachlan going, he's talking to the dead guy. Well, it looks like a sandstorm is coming. I filmed that the next day when it was clear. And then we used the fans to build a sandstorm. And I had the directional sign blow over, so I retrofitted the sandstorm and got production value. They never would have let me write. What are you, crazy? We can't afford a sandstorm. Take this out of the script. But it went in ex post facto.
I can just imagine the look on Gil's face if the word sandstorm in script.
Yeah, they complain later about the cost of setting the fans up. But speaking of fans, I see on websites, this is universally not only in the top 10, often in the top 2 or 3 of people's favorite episodes.
Right. I was going to mention that, someone in the fan community and that talks to a lot of people. People always talk about their favorite episodes. This is easily top 5 on just about any list, if not top 3.
I know. I've seen that. And thank you.
No, speaking of the fans and the budget and everything, this is a very big episode especially for Tales from the Crypt. You got car chases, you got stunts, you got explosions, you have a vulture. Were there any arguments about the budget going into this?
Well, always.
At one point, Joel complained it was that the fans put it over the fans being sent up like at the last minute, I guess, because of the time difference. They had to like leave at dawn or something to get. He said the fans made it the most expensive episode ever. And you're always bragging you can control costs. Like I've always come in on movies I like on a lot of his movies. He would actually have me come in and slash the budget because he knew that revise the script for a budget. He knew I could do it painlessly. So like on Ricochet, the picture was over budget, and he said, "Listen, I've contrived to the director is doing a location scout.
It was
right
Russell.
now.
It was Russell Mulcahy, wasn't it?
Yeah, Russell's going to be out of the office for 2 days. I want you to do a revision to get the budget down, but let me see it first, right? So he doesn't complain. So I did that, and I got $3 million out of the budget, and nobody noticed. You know what I mean? Like the audience doesn't know that you combine 2 sets into one. Right. And all the other, or the 2 characters became one. The biggest choice was Russell had storyboarded a car chase, right? And then I put a foot chase in the rain in an alley. So the foot chase in the rain through an alley was a replacement for a car chase he wanted. But by adding the rain, I knew it would appeal to Russell because he's like that kind of MTV director. So he didn't complain that the car chase was out. So anyway, I don't know whether it held the record, but at that point, Joel said, "Send those fans up, put you over the top. Thanks a lot."
I want to talk about Kyle MacLachlan. Was he eager to play a villain? He hasn't really done this kind of role before, to play a nasty villain.
Absolutely. He really, really enjoyed it. And when we were doing it, he was saying, I'm doing this monologue. This is almost a precursor to a movie that the Harry Potter actor did called Swiss Army Man. Yeah. Somebody's going around with a dead body and talking to him. So he said, give me more evil stuff to mumble. So I added dialogue. Some of the things he says as he's talking to himself: women, can't live with them, can't get more than 6 of them in a car trunk. I added all more serial killer dialogue actually up on location.
Wow. And speaking on location, so you filmed most of it in Joshua Tree, but then suddenly you switched to Vasquez Rocks.
Yes, we went to Vasquez Rocks for the for the final thing to work, where he almost gets to Mexico, and then he falls. This was from I think from the short story. I think the guy falls. Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly. I think the character falls in the short story. So I said, "Where can we go?" And they said, we're going to go to Vasquez. And of course, that's where that's so famous. Star Trek was filmed there. The Lone Ranger was filmed there. So it's a very iconic location, and it worked out really well for us.
What's funny is if I understand it correctly, because I've been there a couple of times, where the whole sequence takes place is right next to the parking lot. It's just on the other behind you.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very close. Yeah.
So were there day hikers just sitting there watching?
No. It just so happened we didn't see really anybody that day. As it worked out. I guess we worked all day. Maybe they like you often have in Los Angeles County. We had a cop there or something. And so people were kept away, but nobody intruded on our set. We did have some drama though. We hired our caterer fell out the last minute. So we hired whoever the caterer was in when we were at Vasquez Rocks was not our regular caterer. We lost our regular caterer. So people are we break for lunch, and people are going, "Oh, the water tastes funny. The lemonade tastes funny, right?" Everybody's saying it, and finally, a couple of the crew members, the buzz is spreading. It's almost like a horror movie. People go, "Pfft." They were like, right. So a couple of crew members went and opened up the tank of water, and then there was a tank of the containers of lemonade, the big there, and there was mold all inside of them, and they went crazy. I swear to God, they would have lynched the caterer. I had to say, back off. I had to rescue the caterer. They were pushing the truck, knocking the truck over, right? Wow. And then so the guy fled in the roach coach, and we sent somebody out to get fast food from I don't know, McDonald's or Roy Rogers or something. So we had a little horror movie right there on the set.
Yeah, that would have been bad. And then how was it?
Well, it would have been good if I could have gotten on camera.
How was it directing a vulture when you first?
We had a trained vulture, which is actually pretty well trained. If you notice, he actually is in. He's in some of the shots. Mm-hmm. There's a lot. You can see the real vultures in a lot of shots. Is interacting with Kyle and with Roy Del Roy. And then we had an audio animatronic puppet vulture, of course, for when, it's eating his eyeball. I also love how Tales of the Crypt, every episode begins with an illustration that usually is a spoiler alert.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm going, what if, everyone is like, oh, gee, there's the poster for us is Kyle MacLachlan getting his eye ripped out by a vulture.
Yeah.
You know, and many of the others also. It gives the whole thing away.
It did. You're right.
That's the show. What do you want?
Yeah.
It'll work.
It works. I mean, yeah, speaking of working, so how do you approach a very simple premise of just a convict dragging along, you know, a cop? How do you approach that and say, how do I make this into, you know, 20 plus minutes?
Well, first off, in the comic book, it's only briefly.
Right.
In the comic book story, he's only briefly handcuffed to the guy, and so I immediately recognized that this idea of being stuck with the body in a desert as being familiar with Eric von Stroheim's movie Greed.
Oh boy,
the climax of Greed is exactly that, where the guy swallows the key, which I may or may not. I'm not sure if that is in the comic book. I'm not sure if that's in the comic book, but it is in Greed. And in fact, as I probably will do, maybe when next time someone on Twitter mentions this episode of Tales from the Crypt, I had a couple of moments that I deliberately copied the shot in Greed, you know, and for our picture, and also our color scheme with our cinematographer Rod Draper. That scene in Greed is tinted for like a hot sepia, you know. So if you look at our color scheme, we also like go in that direction to sell the heat of the movie. I got chewed out by Rod because I had to get one pickup shot of Kyle that was at the last minute with another setup, and we were running out of time. He said, it's not going to match what we did there. I said, well, it's just for a split second. It's just single pop of him. But wherever he is right now, he's saying, damn, to Souza, he ruined my whole palette with that one shot.
We ultimately parted ways with Rob Draper. Didn't we, Gil? I think he didn't survive the whole first season, did he?
I don't recall, actually.
I wasn't first season. This was.
Well, I mean, the first season, Gil and I were on the show. You were season 3.
Yes,
which Gil and I was season 1. Everything before us is. But
weren't you on the show when I was writing the script, and when Jerry and I were writing our scripts?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the thing was, now for me, because you were Steve D'Souza and I was not Steve D'Souza, I had nothing to do with your script. It was Steve's writing his script. He'll let you look at it later.
Well, listen, you know what? We all put our pants on one leg at a time, and we all sit for hours and hours in Joel's waiting room.
Hey, I had so much on
whoever we are.
No, I had so much on my plate. I was grateful. Thank you for taking something off my plate. I'm grateful. Jason, did you have any? Are you happy?
You know, again, talking to someone who, you know, made a very seminal movie in one of the best all-time Tales from the Crypt episodes makes me really happy. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, nice to talk to you too. You know, I will autograph your Tales of the Crypt memorabilia if you can get it to me through these guys.
Sure.
Then we will make sure every last bit of that happens. We're going to put you back into the waiting room, Jason. We're going to finish with Steve.
Before you do that, let me just add one little thing about Raoul. You know, I knew Raoul many years before that, and when I was starting out in New York in theater, and I was constantly asking Joe Papp and Bernie Gersten at the New York Shakespeare Festival for a job, which they never gave me. And I would be down on Lafayette Street, and I came in contact with this young actor and befriended him, and it was Raoul. And we used to go out for pizza together, and we used to hang out in the lobby of the public theater. And you know what you said about him, Steve, is so right. He was the nicest guy in the world. He was a very, very talented and very dedicated guy. And you know, I just enjoyed so much our time together. And then we met up again, you know, after we both came to Hollywood, and I think we had lunch once or twice. And then, of course, as what happens in Hollywood, you go your way and I go mine, and 5 years pass, and all of a sudden you meet somebody in the street. It's like you've never, no time has passed at all. And before I knew it, he was gone. But he was such a nice guy, and he was such a talented guy.
And left a great body of work behind too.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of catching him on stage in Two Gentlemen of Verona.
Yeah,
I saw him too in the park, Theater in the Park in New York. I saw him there too.
Right.
Gone way too soon.
Yeah.
Jason, is there anything else that you would like to ask?
No, I think I am good. But again, thank you for having me. And
Hey, it was always a pleasure. I think you kind of you answered one of the questions. What's the difference between a good action movie and a great action movie? You've kind of answered that question already.
All right. If I did, I did. Okay, I don't remember.
You've touched so much territory in terms of, well, because philosophically you really do, you approach them and you have this incredible background in the history of film. And so these aren't just stories. These are stories in the context of everything that's come before.
Yeah, well, I like to think that, I've studied film. Half of these books I have here, I think I showed are deep dives into genres, and something that's like totally out of my wheelhouse. And I've had friends and stuff, and they go, "Listen, I got this script. Would you give me some notes on it?" And it's like not my wheelhouse. It might be romantic comedy, or historical drama, but like I can like embrace what that could be. And then I'll say, if you're doing historical drama, I think you could take more liberties with reality. I think you've trapped yourself in here. And I would make an example of a motion picture that was like purportedly historical drama, and talk about, actually the princess that Mel Gibson hooks up with in Braveheart, she was actually 4 years old when he was like leading a revolution, but you can argue they were contemporaries. Or Warner Brothers was famous with their historical pictures that they would do of taking great liberties. So like in Santa Fe Trail, which is a Western that ends up with John Brown. John Brown is a fanatic.
Oh, sure.
But anyway, so they try to be equal-handed on the Civil War, but they show all the characters. They basically show that everybody we remember from the Civil War, they were all classmates at West Point at the same year, which they were not. Some of them were like 3 years old when they're supposed to be at West Point with the other character, but it makes the movie. So I've given notes on things that I should have I've put my toes in waters that I shouldn't be in, at least, with friends and peers. And, script analysis is analysis, construction is construction. And I'm a firm believer in the 3-act structure. So I think, so when I approach something, I step back and say, what are the movies? If I do a Western, I have done a couple of Westerns, haven't been filmed yet, but when I do a Western, I immerse myself in all the John Ford movies. I have like multiple books here. One of my favorite books when I wrote one of my Westerns was called The Horse, the Gun, and the Piece of Property. And I go, what the hell is that? And this guy's book, it's like, is that all Westerns can be divided into 3 categories: the horse, the gun, or the piece of property, meaning who is really the co-star here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you talk about a horse Western is like the Lone Ranger, right? He just goes from town to town, except Tonto and the horse are his only constant companions. In the horse Westerns, the horse is usually named. What's the Lone Ranger's horse name? Silver. Gene Autry's horse was named Champion.
Yeah.
Right. Hopalong Cassidy's horse was named Topper. So the horses like got named, right?
Right.
Then you moved on to the gun Westerns, where the horse is featured in the main titles of a TV show. The Lone Ranger is on his horse. Roy Rogers, Trigger, the horse is right in the shot. And when you move to the gun Westerns, the gun is featured. Have Gun Will Travel. The opening shot is his holster. Gunsmoke, boom. The Rifleman, the gun. It's like the co-star. Then you move into the property Westerns. Bonanza, the opening shot is the map, the big valley.
Yeah.
Right. Where the hero goes from a lone figure who was in the wilderness and only drops in civilization sometimes, to an enforcer. Colt 45, another one. The gun is right. The title, right? Yeah. Now you become an enforcer, and the weapon, and it's all about like violence, and as opposed to bringing law and order, it's more about the violence. For the Lone Ranger, was not so much about the violence; it was about helping the little town. And then the property Western, where you have the Big Valley, Bonanza, the Virginian became a property Western. Mm-hmm. And the book concludes saying, if the Lone Ranger showed up on Bonanza, they would lynch him. Right? the father, the Bonanza father, would be the leader of the mob to this like wandering person with the mask.
I'm just imagining Lorne Greene leading a mob.
So but I read that book that made that I go, wow, this is here's a fresh analysis of Westerns, and it's stuck in my mind. And he was mainly about television Westerns, but like, wow, it was a really solid argument,
Is there anything you'd like to promote or tell us about, or?
Well, I guess I'm trying to think of what I've got cooking. I've got a movie. I have two movies that were supposed to have started already. That one was COVID. I have kind of a rom-com action movie that was going to go October of last year, and we're trying to put it back together again. And Simon West was going to direct that. And we actually had I'm losing track of all my James Bonds. Give me who was one James Bond before the current one. Take me back here.
Oh, that was wow. Okay,
Pierce Brosnan.
Brosnan.
We had Pierce Brosnan as the lead character, and we're looking for the woman when the movie fell apart. And I so I don't know if we're going to get Pierce again or not. And then I have a movie that was supposed to shoot. It's going to shoot in the spring in this is a new place in Budapest and Hungary, doubling for rural New York. They assure me it can be done. Again, the flora and fauna are the same, actually.
Yeah.
And that
like
is
Woodstock.
That is about bounty hunters. But when this is with my friend Peter Lenkov, he's a well-known guy. He's done a lot. He did Demolition Man and a lot of television. So this is a feature film we're doing together. He's going to produce it with me. And he said, I want to do something about bounty hunters. And I've got a line into Dog the Bounty Hunter. He can be like, it could be his biopic or something. So the more I looked into it, I said, you know what? Bounty hunters are like the pond scum of law enforcement. They're completely, and I don't want you to tie yourself to Doug the Bounty Hunter because like right before the movie comes out, we can see that like he accidentally put somebody in the hospital or something. And in fact, since this conversation, there's been stuff that he's been involved with, recordings of him yelling at his children, not quite Mel Gibson, but all that. They said, thank you for like talking me out of so anyway, the take is that bounty hunters are the worst. And the story is told to the point of view of someone who is grabbed by bounty hunters, right, and is innocent. So it's sort of like The Fugitive, only on a smaller level, but without the benefit of law, because the law that lets bounty hunters work literally goes back to the Wild West. It's a law on the books that went all the way to the Supreme Court and said, yeah, they can get away with this stuff. It's a strange loophole, and they can do this in 48 of the states. They can. And in some states, they're not regulated at all. You can just like the fellow running for senator, you can just buy a badge online. And say you're a bounty hunter. You don't even have to take a course. But the two characters are, again, this is a contemporary Western. Totally, it's a contemporary Western, and the characters are a cowboy and an Indian. The character who is wrongly accused is a transplanted Texan living in New England. And the bounty hunter who comes after him is a Mohawk. She's a Mohawk, and and there's a huge tribe up there. And most Westerns today, contemporary Westerns, Hell and High Water and Wind River and so forth, they all take place on the southern border. But the border between Canada and New York State is as wild as anything, where the Great Lakes are. There's all kinds of crime. There's the equivalent of the mafia, French mafia in Quebec that does smuggling, and it's so remote from the centers of population. What's interesting, again, when I got into this, I'm getting lost in the weeds here. Stop me if you want. All of the earliest American literature about the frontier is in New England. Guns along the Mohawk, drums along the Mohawk, right? The leather stocking tales, right? Last of the Mohicans, at the Great Lakes. It's Fort William McHenry, right? Even the original book that The Searchers is based on, the abduction of a woman, took place in New York State. That whole story about the long search for 20 years for the kidnapped girl, that's based on that, on Great Liberties with John Wayne, but moved to the Southwest. So as I got into this, I'm going, He's, wait, it's a Western and it's in New York State? And I go, yeah, and here's why that will work. So that's supposed to go in the spring. And I'm hoping to, I resurrected a number of years ago. I can't believe how long ago. It's been almost 20 years. On behalf of the rights holder, I reinvented the famous Golden Age character, Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. But I've been with our current publisher for 5 years now with our greatest level of success. Our first issue sold 100,000 copies, which is an unheard of number if you're not Marvel or DC. And the reviews have been like, staggering. So we're about, I hope, I had a phone call, actually, a Zoom call Friday that had to get canceled. I think for the same reason I rescheduled with you. Excuse me. We're going to be going out to setting up with a streaming service, and you can go to your local comic book store and pick up some copies of this. Dynamite Publishing, and we've got a great team. And also, I'm very happy that on the comic we've had a lot of the top women in the comic world who get paid more money from Marvel and DC have come to work on this book because it's such a seminal, if you can use that term in this case, this seminal character. She's the first female superhero to get her own book, even before Wonder Woman. And my reinvention of it is there's no longer any unexplored areas of Africa, but there are in the Amazon. So the show is reinvented. I reinvented it in the Amazon, and it's no longer like the white savior. It's no longer Kevin Costner, like, he's almost an Indian. Or Tom Cruise, almost a samurai. The character's a multi-ethnic character. It's a Latina heroine, and she has her mother is an indigenous from an indigenous tribe. She has an American father, so she's really protecting her own people, her own landscape. And in the history of the character, she's gone from being accidentally orphaned in the Amazon, like in the movie The Emerald Forest, where the kid just wanders off and it grows. So she has grown up with this tribe, which is related to her grandmother's people. And then when she comes back into civilization, is discovered she's the long lost heiress to this, like, basically evil in corp, the same conglomerate that is exploiting the rainforest and violating all the rules of commerce, is actually her family. So now she says, okay, my teenage years, I was like sabotaging their illegal mining and blowing up their trucks, but now I can do more to stop them if I embrace my heritage. So like Bruce Wayne, she has a dual identity, and the equivalent for a young girl. If you remember in the first Nolan movie, they did with Batman, when after Christian Bale has gone off for 5 years and learned all the ways of being a Batman character, all the killing and the maiming and the karate and the sword fighting, he makes his return to Dodge City. He makes his return to Gotham City. I got Westerns on my mind. He's about to go to this charity event. He stops his car just outside of the hotel. He pours liquor all over his clothing and deliberately crashes into a fountain to establish his bona fides as like a wild playboy, the Don Diego role. So the Sheena character, she does her equivalent of that. She's back in civilization. She can't handle alcohol, and she's got money to burn. So she's like a Paris Hilton out of control. No one would suspect that person of being the mysterious Avenger in the rainforest. Right. So it's available at your comic book store, Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, and the current 10 issue arc. Issue 9 is now. I've managed to suck in everything I absorbed as a child. I've got the Sheena, Queen of the Jungle show, which I watched regularly. I was a nut. There were all these jungle shows. There was Ramar the Jungle. There was Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. There was Jungle Jim. There was Rama the Jungle, the Elephant Boy, a segment of Pete's Gang, and then the Western Stampede knocked all these shows off the air. These shows were on the air in the 50s, and then around 1958, it was all Westerns. But I was such a Sheena fan that I went to show and tell, and I brought the only toy they made was the hunting horn that she would call the animals with, and I got ripped by all the other boys for bringing like a girl's toy. So then after that, the rest of the day, I said, "Oh no, that's a Davy Crockett powder horn." It probably was made from the same mold, actually, at the toy factory, undoubtedly.
Completely.
Yeah, and then like I spent an extra year in junior high school because I always had like, if I didn't have Raymond Chandler behind my outro book, I had H. Rider Haggard, or I had Edgar Rice Burroughs. So this has got all of that stuff. It's every pulp thing you want. I managed to get dinosaurs and Nazis into the same story.
The bottom line is you still have a shit ton of stories to tell.
Absolutely, and haven't even gotten into my favorite screenplays, which are the ones that got written and never shot. But Hope Springs Eternal. In fact, I got invariably, I think I mentioned it before, invariably several times a year, somebody calls me up and says, "Listen, I read the script. Is that available?" Yeah, but you got to pay some money to another studio to get it out. Yeah. Well, let's meet about it. You know, whatever. So I got another one of those Tuesday morning about an old script.
Now we have something to talk about a third time. It's the ones that got away or we haven't quite nailed down yet.
Oh, a couple of mine are. There's a book called "The Greatest Science Fiction Movies Never Made," and I've got two of them in that book.
Oh well. This is our next conversation.
Well, I'll have to send you added links to the ones that got away, because there's been coverage and interviews about some of them.
It's funny. Gil and I, before the end of the year, we're going to do a charitable thing where part of what the first season of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast was the story of the making of Bordello of Blood. We were never supposed to make Bordello of Blood as the second Tales from the Crypt feature. We were supposed to make a whole different movie called Dead Easy. And the whole thing was at the last second, Universal pulled the plug on Dead Easy, and it didn't change the schedule and said, "You're going to make Bordello of Blood instead." Well, Dead Easy was our version of Don't Look Now, of Nick Rogue's Don't Look Now. It was a psychological thriller with really, it was a movie that needed to be directed and written. Wasn't fucking Bordello of Blood. But
and it was scary and more like a thriller than
It was not straight horror, but
blood and guts and not
I that's my favorite. I like the ambiguity of treating horror as thriller and where it's more psychological. In addition to Tales of the Crypt, I have two other horror credits. I did a movie with Gail Ann Hurd called Bad Dreams. Mm-hmm. Which has a cult following now. Mm-hmm. And the director had written a script, and I was brought in to it was coming out of film school. I was brought in to do a major rewrite. And I also said, let's be ambiguous.
Sure.
You can't compete with like Freddy Krueger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons it has like a really, it had a very, very, it was a Fox movie, but it's not that well known, but I recommend it. It's still available on home. It's, I think, Shout Factory. In addition to Shout Factory having my first film from 1972, they also have Bad Dreams, which again, is it real or is it Memorex? Is this supernatural? But there's some of those some of those people are acting very suspicious. And the other film I have, which is on Amazon now, which is called Possessed, which is based on a nonfiction book, which was about the true case that inspired The Exorcist. And it's fascinating when the book was presented to me. The real case was it took place, I guess, around 1949, and in Maryland, and involved some priests from George Washington University, or from whatever. Maybe it's not. Whatever. There's a Jesuit school in Washington D.C. I don't know where it is. Anyway, some priests from there, they got involved with the case, and the original case was very ambiguous. Some people said,
sure,
definitely was the devil.
Yes.
Other people
said, of course, it's ambiguous.
Yeah. Other people said, I think the kid was just like a very clever, like toxic kid, who was playing with people's minds. And William Peter Blatty was attending school in Washington D.C. at the time, at one time, and somehow we heard from some of the professors there about this case that had happened like 15 years earlier. or whatever. So he managed to track down a surviving priest who had worked on the case and said, "Did this really happen?" He said, "Yes. In fact, I have a diary I kept during the time."
Oh, wow.
And he said, "But, and I will give you I'll share my diary with you. But the child is still alive. In fact, I performed the wedding ceremony for the child, and you have to disguise it." So the actual real case was a blue collar little boy from a working class family. So to move it away, he made it an upscale girl, right? And then some of the things you see in the Exorcist movie, the kid throwing up and becoming violent, and so some of that stuff happened. So I made a film based on the nonfiction book about the underlying case. I slid the timeline up a few years earlier because I felt that what was really going on was, at that time when this happened, it was really the first kind of satanic panic. There was a brief satanic panic in the early 50s when they went after the comic books, right? The Kefauver hearings, the Golden Age.
Oh, yeah.
And they were looking for communists under every bed, right? And the paranoia of the time, I felt that was really the underpinnings. And it was before the McMartin preschool. That was the underpinning. So that is, again, what you're talking about. The movie's very ambiguous, although, and I probably got the best reviews of my life on this movie that nobody saw. Really, I mean, staggering. And
that hurts. That hurts.
That hurts. Well, I have the reviews, if not the box office. But one of the things that struck me about that is these underpinnings that in my mind, okay, it was McCarthyism. It was like the Red Scare. A lot of the critics picked up on that. That's what and so they were saying this is actually more interesting than the Blatty film, which I guess is the best review you could get of an exorcism film. And this is the movie
the Blatty film.
Film. But this is one of the things that again, like working with Raul Julia, working with Denzel Washington, and now working with Timothy Dalton, reinforces my theory that actors who come from the stage are just the best people, the best collaborators. And this was the movie where Timothy Dalton came over to me and said, "Listen, I want to talk to you about the last scene of the movie." And working with movie stars, I go, "All right, here it comes. I'm going to get my pencil out." And he says, "You know what I think in this scene, my dialogue? I think I should say nothing." And I go, "What? You could have knocked me over with a feather. In fact, I should be in the background. Like the kid is fine now. The parents are happy. They're hugging the kid. They don't even notice. I'm out of their minds, out of sight, and I just walk off in the distance like the Lone Ranger." He said like the Lone Ranger, which again brought it full circle for me.
Yeah.
Steve, this has been terrific.
Truly. We cannot thank you for coming back, and we hope that you'll join us a third time, because really, let's talk about the ones that got away.
All right. That's the name of your next podcast, The Ones That Got Away.
Indeed,
yes.
It's pre-sold.
Well, instead of How Not to Make a Movie, how would you spin that? How not to make a movie?
How?
Will that apply? How not to make a movie? You're talking about movies that How Not to Make a Movie would really be called "Who Do You Have to Fuck to Get Off of This Picture?"
Yeah.
That's what
Truly.
That's what the subtext is. Yeah. I've been on those. I was on Streetfighter when Van Damme was disappearing for days at a time. I was saying that.
Yeah. And you have to fuck to get off this movie.
The late George Cosmatos was a very good friend of mine.
Sure.
And at one point, I said, what, this is crazy. I said we should not go to Thailand. I said, we're not going to start. You cannot possibly film this movie in Thailand. And now, before we start, and look at Raul, we can't start on time. You got to start on time. This is crazy. Who do you have to fuck to get off this picture? And it turned out that when I said that, they took me seriously, and they went to George Cosmatos. And he said, I couldn't possibly do this. Steve's a good friend of mine. He told me that years later, and I said, why didn't you do it? I would have loved if you'd come in,
All right, we'll do this again. Always great to spend time with you, Steve. I loved it when we worked together, and all these years later, nothing's changed, and it's delightful.
Well, let's find a way to do it again.
And that I can absolutely promise you will absolutely happen. Hey, thanks for joining us on the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. We'll see you next time. The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein, Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.